As a small business owner, you deserve more. More confidence, more connectivity, more of the tools that help your business thrive. And at Cox Business, you can expect more from us. We don't just have sales reps. We have perfect plan identifiers. People who will work with you to make sure your business gets everything it needs and nothing that it doesn't. Your business deserves more, and that's why you can expect more from Cox Business. Call 800-526-8572 to switch today.
I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency!
Thanks, losers.
Hello, everybody. Welcome again back to the Fantasy Football Consistency Show. I'm your host, Bob Lung, as always, here with Big Guy Fantasy Sports, bringing you the number one consistency podcast in the world. I don't think that can that be argued? I don't think that can be argued. As always, I have my guest and co-host here, Ron Rigney. Ron, I don't think that can be argued with, could it?
I don't think so, because I think what we need to do is we need to get you one of those late 80s, early 90s WCW, WWE, Ric Flair championship belts that you can wear all the time that says consistent, undisputed consistency champion of the world.
Yeah, I don't.
We need to do
that. We can, we should. We'll get that. But
and see, the thing is, I know that you would wear it all the time. Like
I would
legit wear it. Yeah, so
I would wear it. I wouldn't wear it. I would. Yeah, I would wear it. Yeah. I'm sure my wife would be very impressed with it.
She would love it. I mean, it would be awesome around the office if you had that on all the time. I mean,
yeah. Wear it to meetings.
Yes.
That's a great idea. We'll have to get that. So anyway, as always, we are part of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. And as always, we will bring up to help promote our buddy Dave Ibrahim and the Fantasy Go guys at fantasygo.com. They're doing a great job out there. They've got a great service. If you need it, especially as you're getting close to playoff time, you can hire myself, Colby. Ron will even help out. He'll help me out if somebody comes our way. And to help you with your fantasy team for the next few weeks. Maybe it's 1 week. Maybe it's all the way through the playoffs. Whatever you need. I got somebody that's been hiring me every week for the last 5 weeks to help. We're trying to help him get into the playoffs. So he started off 0-4, and we're about 2 games out. But it's crunch time, so we're making a lot of moves. But he's had some bad luck. He had Tyler Lockett this weekend as it got knocked out. So he ran into a buzzsaw this week. He got beat like 180 to like 120. So I told him, I said, we could have had every player do very well, but I don't think we could have beat that team. So it was a rough week. But anyway, we're helping him hopefully get into the playoffs, and that's what it's all about. It's basically fantasy football Uber. You're going to have one of the experts out there help you with your team, help you get to the playoffs so that you can win your championship, and that's what we're here for. So go to fantasygo.com, get signed up there. Look for me, look for Colby, and we'll help you with your fantasy football team. We can get right in there. If you're on the Yahoo site, we can actually see your league, your waiver wires, who's available, all that kind of great stuff. If not a big deal. We can just you can just send a screenshot to the chat room of the whatever site you're on, ESPN, NFL, whatever, and we can help you with your waiver wires and all that kind of picks as well. So fantasygo.com for that as well. So here we are. We're heading into Week 11. Like I said, it's crunch time. I mean, we've got a couple, probably 3 weeks before most people get into the fantasy playoffs. Maybe 2 weeks if you start even sooner with Week 13. But for most of us, we got 2-3 weeks left. The consistency is starting to kind of run into, kind of mold into shape. And for some players, that's very good. And for some, not so much. So, Ron, let's get started with the quarterback position. And right there at the top, as we would expect, we see guys like Patrick Mahomes sitting up there. We got Deshaun Watson at 78%. But those aren't the top 2 guys. The top 2 guys are Lamar Jackson, of course, and Dak Prescott, of course. Number 2 and number 4 total points overall, 89% consistency, both 8 for 9. I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes' injury is what knocked him out that 1 week. He'd probably still be 100% consistent, but it's hard to argue that Lamar Jackson and probably I think Prescott's even bigger surprise than Jackson because he's played a few years. He's never really been that consistent since his first year. He came in was about 70% as a rookie, but it kind of went downhill from there. It's always been around 50, 60 since then. But new offensive coordinator, new system, good receivers really picking it up. Both have been doing very well. If you got Lamar Jackson or Dak Prescott, you're probably cruising toward a fantasy playoff.
Yeah, and I'm actually lucky enough to have Lamar Jackson on both my Kings Classic teams, which are doing fairly well. I'm 501, 7-3 the other one. That one's a little bit more. I'm a little bit more confident in that one. But I was just kind of perusing the passing stats here for NFL leaders, and you have to take your hat off to Dak Prescott because he's sitting there second in the league in passing yards, and the only reason that Phillip Rivers is ahead of him is because he's played one more game. Dak's averaging over 300 a game. He's got 18 touchdowns, 9 picks. Looking pretty impressive, and it's once again he's got but I think the most impressive thing for me is that rating he's got over it's 102.4, and I think that we've talked about we want to see or we don't want to see, but we were expecting that drop off, but it's just not coming. So I think you got to definitely believe in him at this point. And then Lamar Jackson, you got to scroll down a little bit further to find him, but that's kind of telling you how critical those rushing yards are when he's sitting there 20th in passing yards. He's got a little over 2,000. I have to look up the rushing stats here. I don't have them in front of me, but that kind of illustrates just how big those yards and those touchdowns he gets with his legs really are.
Right. And if I remember hearing right, that he's on the path to be the first ever quarterback in NFL history to throw for 3,000 yards and run for 1,000. So, nobody else has done that. Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, none of those guys have ever done that. So certainly can't see any reason why not. He's got good schedule, good team around him. So as long as he stays healthy, and that's the key with a running quarterback is can he stay healthy? Can he not take the big hit when he's running down the field and take a shot to the knee or something like that? So and
he's sitting here, and I brought up the rushing leaders. He's 11th in the entire league, not quarterbacks, whole league, anybody. Right. So he's got more rushing yards than guys like Mark Ingram. Right. Phillip Lindsay, Jordan Howard. So that tells you right there. The dude's legit. He's a real deal, man.
Yeah. So that's the key is, he's just got to stay healthy. I mean, we all remember, RG3 in his first year, and, he was the next coming of Michael Vick and, those guys. And then, a couple of knee shots later, he's pretty much out of the league. So hopefully that doesn't happen for Lamar Jackson, but he's been doing very well so far. As we move down the list, a few more surprises. Josh Allen in there at 78%, 7 for 9, fantasy points overall 12th. So he's in the top 12 quarterbacks in fantasy points, which is obviously very solid. But I was looking at this last night. I went on another show last night called the Fantasy Vipers or Dynasty Vipers. And we were talking about consistency, and the guy was very shocked by seeing Josh Allen in there. And I said, and we went through the week by week. Josh Allen's only been over 25 points twice, but hasn't been under 20, but just 2 times. And so, that's why he's 12th in total points, and certainly not putting up a ton of points, but enough to get you that every week. And so, if you're in a desperate situation for a quarterback, maybe you lost Matthew Stafford, maybe you've been trying to rely on Baker Mayfield and Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees, and you might need somebody to help, you might want to trade one of those guys away for a Josh Allen and maybe an add-on. Maybe that person won't realize because Josh Allen's probably the backup on that team, and you may be able to get a decent, fine for that and help your team's depth by adding a couple players, including Josh Allen. But I have him in a couple leagues as backups. He's been a nice fill-in when I've had my bye weeks, and that's great. But I'm actually thinking about one of the leagues, including the Kings Classic. I'm seriously thinking about trading Patrick Mahomes away to try to boost my team for the playoff run, and then flying with Josh Allen the rest of the way. Sounds crazy, but I'm not going to get anything for Josh Allen, but I don't know. It's an interesting thought. In that same realm is Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan, Kyler Murray, all above 70%. What are your thoughts on the group within there? And what are your thoughts on Josh Allen? And would you do that trade?
I mean, if I had a big enough hole in other parts of my team and I felt like it could get me that return, if you're that confident in him, I think so. And the thing about Josh Allen too is when you look at his touchdown to interception ratio, it's a little bit deceiving because it shows he has 7 picks, but 5 of those have come in 2 games. One against New England, and then week 1, 3 against New England, and then 2 in week 1 against the Jets. But beyond that, the rating is pretty solid. He's been fairly accurate. He just doesn't have a lot of attempts. That's the only thing that might scare me a little bit. He's only got, I think, 4 games where he's got over 30 attempts.
Right.
So that might scare me a little bit. But for the most part, though, if you can trade a guy like Mahomes, especially coming off the injury, had no rust whatsoever, got popped back in there, didn't miss a beat. I think, if you want to get a true return, you're going to have to. I mean, you got to give up stuff to get stuff. It's pretty simple, especially in Kings Classic League. So you're going to have to get rid of something to get something.
And the other key is, where every win is crucial. In week 12, Mahomes is off.
Yeah.
And so, I don't want to have to, start Josh. If I'm going to start Josh Allen in week 12, I'd rather it be because I have already traded Mahomes away and I can, and I'm picking up, a top running back or receiver or tight end would be the thing I'm actually thinking about, is trying to get a tight end because that league, I have a great team, except my tight end every week is, a mishmash of crap like, Gerald Everett and, I had Will Dissly for a while, lost him. I mean, it's just been, just a mess. And then the other Kings Classic League, I've had Evan Ingram, and he's been killing me with, his injury. So I don't know. So I've, like I said, I was kind of throwing that out there as maybe it's, if you've got, a top quarterback that you could trade off and get an Allen and, that hole you need filled may not be a bad option. So, all right, as we go down the rest of the list, kind of wrap up the quarterbacks, I mean, that's when it gets messy. We see guys like Russell Wilson, number 1 in fantasy points, 60% consistent. Carson Wentz, 56. You talked about Phillip Rivers, number 1 in passing yards. Consistency, 50%. I mean, I think the last 3 years in a row, Phillip Rivers has been exactly 50 or 56% for 3 straight years. He's consistently average. It's always at. Drew Brees, 50%. Baker Mayfield, 44%. I know Aaron Rodgers is in there somewhere. Aaron Rodgers is at 40%. I mean, and he's 5th in total points. That's the kind of stuff that's just killing fantasy teams this year, is those studs who just aren't being consistent. And, and this is why we created the whole, con streaming scenario, was because this is exactly what happened last year. The stud quarterbacks on very good teams with a very good running game and a good defense, like Green Bay, New Orleans, Seattle, they can win football games on the ground. And if they are, then those guys don't need to throw the ball. And then that's what you run into is inconsistency. When they do have to, and they're playing a team that's putting up some points, then they can easily do that. But definitely something worth looking into. Any thoughts on any of those guys?
Well, I mean, it kind of encapsulates Baker Mayfield's season when in one of my Kings Classic leagues, I'm trading him for Jason Witten because I need a tight end so badly. I don't think that's ever a trade I would have said I would make heading into this season. But, I mean, I was rocking Noah Fant for so many weeks, and that was way before the one big game he had. So It did help me out a little bit. And plus I got Lamar Jackson, so that kind of eased the pain a little bit. But that kind of shows you right there, too. That's another one of those Josh Allen guys that you're lucky you drafted him later on to kind of replace what Baker Mayfield is not doing that you thought he would heading in. And it's just, with Phillip Rivers, too, beyond the stats, I got to watch him a couple different times, and he has just not looked sharp at all. Especially that game they played against the Raiders, man. He was struggling a little bit, and it kind of makes me wonder about him going into next season. And, he, like you said, historically, last few years, he's been right around that 50% mark. and he's not seeming to be any more consistent, and he has weapons around him as well.
And yet, like you said, he's top in total yards.
Mm-hmm.
So somehow he's still throwing for a lot of yards, and maybe a lot of that is garbage time, but still throwing for a lot of yards, but just has never had the consistency in a fantasy aspect.
Just not getting them every week like you need them.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's move on to the running back position. We still have 4 guys right at the top at 100%. Obviously, due to buys, some have played 10 games, some have played 9, some have played 8. James White is 8 for 8. Still there, 24th in total points. Leonard Fournette's there. Nick Chubb is there. And Dalvin Cook, of course, is the top guy, 10 for 10. He'll be off. Is it this week or is it next week? I can't remember. I think it's this week. So he'll be out, and so that'll hurt for you people that have had Dalvin Cook all year. But all those guys just, again, being very nice and consistent. Nick Chubb, doesn't matter what the Browns do, he's going to put up the yards. It'll be interesting to see this game on Thursday night with the Steelers. Steelers have a pretty good defense. Nobody's really seemed to stop Chubb completely. He seems to always kind of get, his yards. He may not get a lot of catches, and especially now with Kareem Hunt in the backfield with him. But he's still getting that 14, 15 points, so he's definitely doing a good job there. At the 89%, McCaffrey, Zeke Elliott. Elliott missed his first clutch game of those guys. And then there's 2 more. Well, we got 86% Alvin Kamara, 80% Derrick Henry. I'm sorry, Austin Eckler, then Derrick Henry. Of those guys in that range, any surprises to you? I'm a little surprised that Eckler has continued to put up decent numbers.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that kind of speaks to his pass catching ability, I think, too. But that also speaks a little bit to the slow start that Melvin Gordon got off to. I think the last couple of weeks, so he's finally kind of got his mojo back. And Dalvin Cook actually has Week 12 bye. They have the Broncos coming to town this week, so you got one more week before the Dalvin Cook bye. I think James White, yet again, he continues to be that guy that surprises us here, does just enough to kind of squeak in that clutch game every week. And like we said last week, he's kind of that ideal flex position player that you want. You could have had, if you're lucky, you could have had guys like Fournette, maybe a James White a little bit later on, and you go down the list a little bit, maybe a Chris Carson or maybe a Devin Singletary, and that's not a bad little trio of running backs to put in your 2 running backs in your flex spot. But not a ton of surprises there. It's one thing I really like seeing is Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook both up there. They haven't been injured, and they've been 100% consistent. That's what we've been waiting on for those guys for, it seems like, forever.
Right.
And it's finally happening, and they're finally paying off with those high picks you're paying for them.
Yeah. I mean, Fournette obviously has really been the best bargain of those guys, just from the standpoint that a lot of people gave up on him, including myself. And he went in the 4th, 5th round as an RB2, and I just looked right past him. I mean, I don't think I ever went, I should take Leonard Fournette here in the 4th round. Oh, well, wait a minute. There's, Chris Carson. I'll take him because I just didn't have any faith in him getting his act together. So good for him for doing that, and for the guys that did draft him and benefited from him. So as we move into the 70% range, we've got James Conner and Barkley, who've missed a few games due to injuries, but at 71%. Barkley actually missed his clutch game this week as well, which is a rarity. Also, right at 70%, we've got Aaron Jones and Chris Carson. Those 2 guys were kind of not given a lot of love. Now, I gave, of course, Chris Carson more love than humans should be allowed to give. But Aaron Jones, I was kind of like, I just didn't know if Matt LaFleur was really going to give him the opportunity to, be the main back. And, at first, the first few games of the year, it didn't look like it was going to work out. Everybody was kind of, he wasn't really earning the clutch games. He started slow. In fact, then they had Jamal Williams in there quite a bit. But, after week 1, and they just kind of turned it around, and actually him and Jamal Williams have been pretty decent. In fact, if you look down not much further, down at 56% is Jamal Williams, who's actually 25th in total points, so just outside the RB2 spot. And so, he's been a nice actual flex fill-in, which I have him in quite a few leagues. I was kind of drafted him later in most drafts, thinking that, well, if Aaron Jones goes down, he's the only guy that's going to get the ball. So that's what, I wasn't hoping for that, but I thought, well, it's at least a decent handcuff, even if I didn't have Aaron Jones in most spots, but been pretty productive out of that slot. So what are your thoughts there on the 70% guys, where they're at and where you think they'll continue to go?
Well, one thing I stumbled upon this last week that I was comparing a couple of different guys, because a guy that I work with was talking about, he's a big Packer fan, and he was talking about how much Aaron Jones has meant to his fantasy team, because he's a casual player. It's his first year playing, doing really well, but he wanted to get a Packer on his team. He got Aaron Jones. He's happy about that, and he was talking about how valuable he's been. And the one thing I stumbled upon that was a little bit telling for me anyway, obviously the 11 touchdowns is huge.
Right.
But he was talking about him in the same breath as Christian McCaffrey and kind of comparing the stats. And I'm like, now, wait a minute. Let's take a look at this. And so when you look at the rushing stats, there's a little bit of a discrepancy there just because it's like a 400-yard gap. But they both have 11 rushing touchdowns. But the one thing I would not have picked up on is how similar or how close they are in receiving. So when you look at Christian McCaffrey so far this season has 48 catches, 396 yards, and 3 touchdowns. When you look at Aaron Jones's receiving stats this season, 35 catches, 354 yards, 3 touchdowns. Never would have thought that. So that kind of tells you right there, not only are those touchdowns huge, but he's been a really valuable part of your PPR fantasy game as well.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it's surprising that he's third in total points. I know he's had a couple big weeks, but, and that's the thing. When you see Aaron Jones and Chris Carson side by side at 70%, you're like, well, Aaron Jones, it's just amazing that he's 50 points ahead of Carson. Even though Carson is 7th in total points, that's just, kind of surprising that there's that big of a gap between 3rd and 7th place, but there is.
Because and it seems like Aaron Jones' season is very, very quiet, too. Unless you have him on a team, I don't think you would have any idea he's doing as well as he's doing.
Well, like I said, he's had a couple of those big games that, jumped out. In fact, I think this past week, he had 27. He was 3rd overall in fantasy points because he had those 3 rushing touchdowns. So that's where that kind of stuff jumps out at people when they see those stats, because they're usually listed on some leaderboard that first day. So real quick, let's just kind of look down the rest of the group. I mean, I think pretty much the rest of the group is, that's at the 67, 63%, basically anything over 50%. There's some guys that I think we all wish were a little bit higher if you had them on your team. Now, I didn't draft Josh Jacobs or Le'Veon Bell, or Todd Gurley, that kind of stuff. So I'm okay if they're not doing that great. But, I did draft David Johnson, and I did draft Tevin Coleman, Mark Ingram, Devontae Freeman. So those have been disappointing. Now Freeman's hurt, so that's gonna be a kick in the nuts for some of my teams. I got to scramble to find some guys. But, that's, I think, some of those players in that range were drafted, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round as your RB, maybe 1 or 2. A 2 for sure for most of them. Johnson probably was a 1, and he's been disappointing. And it's been the health. I mean, when he was healthy at the beginning of the year, he looked like he was going to set the world on fire again. And then all of a sudden, he's just falling apart. And, I heard somebody say the other day, I don't know if it was Hanson or Bob Harris or somebody on the Sirius Radio, and said, I think we've seen the best of David Johnson, and we may never see it again. And I think it's very true.
I was just having a conversation with a buddy of mine today because we were trying to swing a dynasty trade here, and a couple seasons ago, I was able to. I think I originally drafted Todd Gurley, and I was able to make a trade to get David Johnson. And man, I thought I had a slick pair of running backs. Last me a few years, and it's like all of a sudden I've gone from having 2 the top tier running backs to basically having no running backs. I'm relying on I think Devin Singletary and Kerryon Johnson. And Kerryon Johnson's hurt, so I'm down to nothing. And so it's crazy how quickly these guys have just kind of fallen. But I agree with that 100%. I mean, you might see – I don't know if a change of scenery would help him. I don't know what would help David Johnson. But I think that we've seen definitely the best of him. It's going to be tough to get back to that point. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, to me, a back injury in football is almost as bad as a knee injury. I mean, I just feel like how in the hell do you play football taking hits if you have back problems? I mean, because those things just don't heal up. I mean, it just seems like it would be very difficult. But it's not like you can rehab a back. I mean, put some pins in it and hope for the best. I don't know, but then he's got other issues too, with his legs as well. So, going down the chart, I mean, there's a few guys in there that people have been counting on: Joe Mixon, Sony Michel, David Montgomery, Jordan Howard, Marlon Mack, all below 50%. Most of them have been, probably weren't your starters except for Mixon. That's probably been the biggest killer of the year. He did have a decent week this past week. In a surprise move of giving him the ball 30 times in a game they were getting blown out by 30, which I sadly had to apologize to somebody because somebody asked me whether they should start Mixon or I think it was David Montgomery. And I said David Montgomery because I knew Mixon was playing Baltimore. I'm like, they're going to be so far out of it, he'll never see the ball. And then he gets 30 rushes for 120 yards. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't know who in the world thought that was a great idea to give him 30 rushing attempts. But they did, and so he obviously outplayed Montgomery. But any thoughts on any of those guys down in that lower level there that you think might kind of pick it up a notch?
I mean, the only one that I see, down there 50%, I think you'll see Melvin Gordon continue to rack up the clutch games. I really have been impressed with him with what I've seen the last couple of weeks and kind of getting back into swinging things. And I think it's going to be good for him to have Eckler to kind of take some of that load off his shoulders as well and prove that he can do that. But, you mentioned Devontae Freeman before. I'm looking at, and this is the sad state of things as far as one of my Kings Classic teams is with buys and with the Devontae Freeman injury. My starting backfield right now in, I believe it's the auction league, is going to be Jalen Richard and Naheem Hines coming up this week. So,
ouch. Needless
to say, I don't have a lot of confidence in the Kings Classic Fantrax HQ squad backfield this week. So we're going to say a few prayers going into Sunday morning.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm playing the two full-time teams. One is Brad Cuse, of course, and the other one is Brian Owens.
See, that's funny because I'm playing Chris Prince in both as well.
Nice. Yeah, a couple times that seemed to play out this way. But just to make you feel better, in the auction league, the Snake League, where I also had, I had Chris Carson in that league and Evan Ingram, which obviously he's out. But here's my amazing lineup for the week. Carson Wentz, Jordan Howard, playing New England, don't have a choice. I could play Sony Michel against Philadelphia. I'm not 100% sure. I might have to put him in, but I have Jalen Richard as my second running back. Mike Evans, Tyrell Williams, TJ Hawkinson, who I had to pick up because damn Evan Ingram, we don't know if he's out. He's on a bye. Julio Jones, James Washington, who I just picked up. And here's the sad part. I'm playing the Patriots defense on the same team that I'm starting two Eagles at quarterback and running back. So, it's a rough week. So I don't know. I kind of like Jalen Richard against Cincinnati because I feel like they'll be, scoring a lot of points and, he's going to get hopefully a lot of catches out of the backfield. But I don't know. It's like you said, this is a rough bye week, and I'm hoping that maybe Philadelphia will surprise everybody and have a decent game against New England, but I'm not counting on it. It is in Philly. That kind of helps.
Yeah, I like Jalen Richard for all those reasons, but I also like him because he was about the only thing out there that I could add and actually has a pulse that is going to play. So
right.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, at least in my auction league, I've got a pretty good lineup. I've got Mahomes, Chubb, Eckler, Keenan Allen, Marvin Jones, Kareem Hunt, Sammy Watkins, Mike Gesicki I have to put in at tight end because, again, I haven't – that's the one where I was thinking about trading Mahomes and putting Josh Allen in just to get somebody worth of crap to play tight end because there's just nothing out there. But we'll see. But anyway, so enough about our Kings Classic teams and our pains and agonies because we know that you all have the same pains and agonies this week in your leagues because of the buys. And like I said, Week 12 is going to be the real brutal one when the Vikings and the Chiefs are off. Gosh. Who else is off that week? I know that's a brutal week. Arizona.
Yeah, 12 is
Kansas City, the Chargers, Minnesota. I guess that's it. But still, isn't that enough?
Yeah, Cards, Chiefs, Chargers, Vikings.
Yeah, a lot of
some big names.
Some big names.
Off time.
So, like I said, every win is crucial at this point. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I forgot to look which one of the Kings Classic leagues, the 8 out of the 12 teams in the league, 7 out of the 14 teams in the league are 6-4. 7 out of 14 are 6-4. We're all tied for first. How about that? How about that for consistency amongst the talent? So, all right, let's move to the wide receiver positions. Michael Thomas has been dominating all year. Perfect 100% consistency. 211 fantasy points. Second place is 23 back with Mike Evans. And if I think I was looking at this, the difference between first and 12th is, when the hell's 12th at? Can't find 12th. 10th is 154. Oh, because 12th is DJ Chark, all the way down to 56% consistency. So there is 61 fantasy points between first and Michael Thomas and the 12th wide receiver in DJ Chark. That is a big gap at wide receiver, kids. But he's been dominating all year, whether it's been Teddy Bridgewater or Breeze. Up there at 89%, probably as much of a shock as Josh Allen was at, in the upper echelon of quarterbacks, is his teammate, John Brown, for Buffalo at 89% consistency, but only 18th in total fantasy points. John Brown's been doing exactly the same thing Josh Allen has. He's putting up that 11 to 15 points a game, doesn't get any big games, doesn't have any 3-touchdown, 35-point games. He just every week is getting, like I said, that 10 to 15 points, and that's what you need. He's been getting it. Golden Tate right up there at 83% since he's returned 5 of 6. He's been, definitely the man in New York because he's the only healthy guy, with Ingram out and Sterling Shepard out. And, basically there's nobody to throw to other than Golden Tate. And Darius Slayton, who we saw this week, had a big game. But they both are in clutch games.
On my bench in Kings Classic, thank you.
Ouch. Yeah, that hurts. Tyler Lockett, 80%. We got some good news today about him that the swelling in his leg went down and that he's fine and that he should be ready to go in 2 weeks after the bye this week. Right there at 78%. Big crowd at 78%. Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, who had a beautiful 0 points this week. That was fantastic. Yeah, I have him in a few leagues. That was I didn't even realize it until I saw it on the or heard about it or something, and I'm like, what? 0? Come on. DeAndre Hopkins, Julian Edelman, Julio Jones, Kenny Galladay, Cortland Sutton, Allen Robinson, DJ Moore. This one is the best. At 78%, we should take a picture of this because this is. I didn't think that this day would ever come. I literally been waiting for horses to come out of the sky and trumpets to start sounding because the world is going to end. But 78% consistency is Devontae Parker. Mr. Preseason has finally made it in life, that he's made it to our list above 50%. I didn't think this day would ever come, let alone to be at 78%. And the thing is, he's red hot. I think he's put up like 5 straight ever since, let's see, 1, 2, 3. No, I'm sorry, 6 straight clutch games. Man. Yeah. This guy is en fuego.
Just hand that MVP trophy over right now. Just
I'm without words here. You got any thoughts on Devontae Parker?
No, but I'll tell you what I hope happens for Devontae Parker, that he's showing a little bit of skills here. There's nobody else to throw to. He's kind of the same scenario, Preston Williams was showing out a little bit there, and he's out. I would like to see Devontae Parker go somewhere else in free agency and not have to be the guy. Because I think if he's used the right way in the right scheme as a complementary piece, maybe a slot guy, I think that would really benefit him. I think that one of the things that's really gone wrong for him is you get these guys that they don't really fit the mold of being a number one, but when they get added into where there's a true number one already on a team, and they can kind of be that complimentary guy, I think that's what he would excel in. But it's great to see. But let's not get too excited yet. He is still sitting 35th in total points, though.
Yeah, I get that. But
it is impressive for Devontae Parker.
Yeah,
78%.
I would have been less shocked if he would have been up there in total points and the consistency would have been bad. Like, you know, he would just be that boom or bust guy. But no, he's been fairly consistent. As we move down the list.
He is above Odell Beckham Jr. in consistency. So yes,
he is. And Mike Evans and Jarvis Landry and T.Y. Hilton and Adam Thielen and Devontae Adams and you know, so that's been really, I think, of any position. You know, we expect the quarterbacks and the tight ends. I mean, that's why we came up with the streaming concept this past year. Hopefully you guys are using it out there, kind of watching, you know, getting the good, solid players you can put in and out each week at those positions. But I don't think I expected this kind of a inconsistency in the wide receivers. I don't think I've seen this kind of inconsistency, especially out of the bigger names this year. A lot of bigger names. Not, you know, every once in a while you have one that kind of falls off, you know, maybe one or two or three that falls off. But, you know, when you look at, like you said, the names below 70%, you know, because that's what I expect when I'm drafting a Mike Evans, Beckham, Hilton, Thielen, Devontae Adams, those kind of guys, Juju, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs. I'm expecting all of these guys, because they're either my 1 or 2 on my team, I'm expecting them to be above 70%, and none of them are. Now, luckily, I've drafted some other good ones like Tyreek Hill and Tyler Lockett and Cooper Kupp and Edelman and, you know, some of those that have saved the day for me. But I definitely have some of these other guys that have not helped me as much, and it's been disappointing. And the thing is, I'm not exactly sure really what's been the problem. You know, now I know what the Browns' problems are, and I know, you know, with Landry and Beckham, that one I see every week, and it's very painful. The other ones have kind of just been all over the place. A lot of boom and bust this year. Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, you know, those kind of guys have just been huge one game, fall off the face of the earth, get a 0, you know, like the Cooper Kupp. Evans has done it. Diggs has been damn close a couple weeks. Keenan Allen's been close a couple weeks of almost hitting 0s. What are your thoughts on some of these guys? Is it teams that are adjusting to stop the stud and that's just how things are going now, and are they going that direction, or is it just it's just the way it is this year?
Well, I'm looking here at Mike Evans because, you know, he's one of the guys I focus on because I have him in a couple of places, one of my money leagues in particular, and as inconsistent as he's been, man, he's really had some huge weeks. Over 40 points, and depending on your scoring system, maybe even 50 in some scoring systems.
Right.
But Jameis Winston's sitting there in fourth at passing yards, so he's airing the ball out. And there's a couple times where I've streamed Jameis Winston, either whether it's consistently cashing or on bye weeks, and he's really paid off for me. And he's gotten the ball to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But I think it's a matter of kind of what you said, because when I look at Mike Evans' targets, he's 7th in the league in targets with 89, but he's only got 54 grabs. So he's missed on about 35 attempts there to get him the ball. And I think you do have to chalk that up to teams maybe paying him a little bit more attention. And it is Jameis Winston, too. He's not known for being the most
it could also be the accuracy of Winston, sure.
Right, but I mean, at least it shows and Godwin's right behind him with 84 targets, so it shows you they're airing the ball out, but it's just a matter of, imagine if he had a quarterback that was a little bit more accurate, the numbers he would be putting up. I mean, he'd be up there, I think, in consistency right there with Michael Thomas.
Right. I mean, the good thing about Tampa is that their defense is keeping basically those guys in games, you know. The defense is, you know, putting them behind or making it competitive. So Jameis has to throw the ball 30, 40, 50 times a game to keep in the game. And that's where, like you said, the targets are coming from. They're not the most accurate targets, probably half the time, but it's definitely getting them there. But, yeah, the boomer bust has been quite the theme in the wide receiver position.
I think he wants to win that Clutch Less award at the end of the year. I think you heard about how prestigious that is. So
I was kind of thinking he won last year. I have to look.
No, he's definitely the front runner so far.
Yeah, he definitely is. And there's quite a few of those. All right, we got about 6 minutes left, so let's move on to the tight end position. This is the hot mess we expected it to be. You know, I said this may even be the worst mess I've ever seen, not because of the inconsistency. It's the fact of even finding healthy bodies in the top 10 that are even worth, even if they are worth starting, they're not playing. I mean, you got Travis Kelce, who's been exactly what we wanted him to be, to a point. And I said this last night on the show I was on. I said, while Travis Kelce is second in total points and a perfect 10 for 10, he's not that far ahead of everybody else. Like last year, remember his consistency, he was like him, Ertz, and Kittle were light years ahead of the rest of the tight ends. I mean, he's second place. He's behind Hooper in total points, and Hooper's played one less game. So obviously now he'll catch up, but he'll have his bye week. But then Austin Hooper is 89%. He's second. He's out for a few weeks. Evan Ingram is third at 88%. He's been out for a couple weeks. We don't know when he'll be back. Hunter Henry is 83%, but he's only played 6 games because he missed the beginning of the season. George Kittle has missed now a couple games. That's the next guy at 75%. So there's your top 5, and only one guy has even played, or will be playing a full season, and that could be only Travis Kelce. Then you got Darren Waller, who's at least healthy, Mark Andrews, who's at least healthy, and Zach Ertz, who's healthy, at 67%. Will Dissly's the only other guy at 67%. He hasn't played for a few weeks. He's out for the year. Then you drop now you're at 50% less. It's a mess. I mean, there's basically 4 tight ends right now that are really worth having on your team. Kelce, Waller, Andrews, and Ertz. Those are the only 4 guys that are healthy and you can count on a consistency basis. That is terrible, man.
Well,
that's why I'm thinking about trading Patrick Mahomes, for a Darren Waller and maybe somebody else. If the guy will even give him up, and he may not. He may go.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's what I said before. It shows the state of affairs when I'm looking here for where is our guy Jason Witten. So I traded Baker Mayfield, who's not much better, but I traded him for a guy that's 44% consistent.
Right.
At tight end because I didn't have anything else. And it's just, when you're trying to compensate for bye weeks, there's nothing. You said, you're looking at the Gerald Everetts of the world and you're hoping that they kind of you catch lightning in a bottle with one of those guys. But, you think it too about how much head and shoulders above Travis Kelce was last year. Going into this season, he's having people pick him in the late first, early second round this year. And definitely, I mean, he's the best guy, but he's not. I don't think he's returning that type of value that you put out. But maybe then again, if you look at it from this aspect, how much you can count on him for the consistency.
Maybe
that is worth it.
Yeah, we only have 2.5 minutes left, but I have Kelce in my Scott Fish Bowl, and I've had him, and then I picked up Darren Waller early in the year, so that was helpful. So those 2 guys have been really carrying me quite a bit. But yeah, I'm sitting there going, I drafted Kelce in the 7th overall because of the high value of tight ends. Got Mahomes in the 2nd round, but at least I don't have to worry about tight ends every week. I grabbed some and streamed some in, but it's just and I was talking about last night talking next year, looking at 2020's draft, and the tight end scenario. And where will these guys go again? Will everybody kind of focus on taking, Waller and Kittle and Ertz and Kelce and Ingram and all them? Will they all be going in the 3rd round next year? Will it just be a run of tight ends in round 3 because you don't want to take the chance that you're going to get stuck with, one of those, one of these 50% stiffs like Greg Olsen or Jason Witten or Kyle Rudolph. I mean, it's sad.
Yeah, and quick update on our guy George Kittle. I just read, we said it was determined about a half an hour ago he's out.
Right.
Apparently, Kyle Shanahan misspoke, and he's just doubtful right now. So not officially out yet, but it does not look good.
Okay. Went from out to doubtful.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
we
feel
too much
better
more optimistic than I was an hour ago.
Yeah, and then to be honest with you, I don't hold anything those guys say until it gets about 5 minutes before the game, and then I go, okay.
Right.
Or they're, at least an hour before the game when they actually list them as out. So, all right, we got about less than a minute. So, let's I just want to thank everybody for listening as always. And don't forget for the consistently cashing and prop bet consistency articles and stuff this weekend. So why don't you tell them about it, Ron?
So trying to get off the schneid. I'm not sure how Colby did. I know I didn't do so hot. I went over 2 last week. I did hit on a couple big ones, including Christian Kirk. I had him in my lineup, but it wasn't enough to get me through. So want to get back to those winning ways in this week 11. I think we can do it.
Definitely. So don't forget to listen to those this weekend. Of course, prop bet consistency tools out there for you if you're helping with your prop bets. And, of course, the podcast and the article will be there this weekend as well. So everybody have a great week. Don't forget to check out all the articles. They are on the Big Guy Fantasy Sports website. If you're a subscriber, you probably already got your email. So once again, everybody, thanks for listening. Everybody have a great week. Take care. God bless. And we'll talk to you next time.
AAA Home Insurance isn't just about roofs and windows. It's about the people inside.
Honey, that tiny leak. Not so tiny.
Which is why you get a full replacement guarantee on everything we cover.
Mom, I dented the car.
And discounts when you bundle your home and auto insurance.
Mom, can we go to Hawaii?
Plus, when you pair your coverage with a AAA membership, you get discounts on travel, hotels, and more.
Oh, thanks, AAA.
Join today at AAA.com. Get great insurance and more to outsmart life at home. AAA. Outsmart life.
A voicemail from Dorothy, a real Banner Health patient.
I had a procedure yesterday. It should have been terribly daunting, but the women that helped were absolutely fantastic. They worked beautifully as a team. They knew what patients needed. They were very reassuring. Their professionalism showed all the way. Thank you so much.
We're here to help you breathe easier. Banner Health. Exhale.